This is Scott Horne, and this video is going to talk about expired listings or listings that are delayed in selling for various reasons of that nature. So if you find this helpful, take a minute and like the video. If you have any comments about it, please feel free to comment below. And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Just to start off, let's talk about owner financing, subject to deals just briefly, of course, because as you're buying a house, maybe it's one that has an expired listing or one that's been listed now for 90, 120 days and is slow in selling for some reason. You can buy that house, of course, subject to the existing debt. There may be a realtor involved, maybe not, in which they will probably negotiate their commission a little bit along the way, because if it's fixing to expire or has expired, they're done unless they have a buyer. And so you have some room there to play. Your seller may or may not be behind in payments. They may need some walk-away cash. And there's various situations that they may be into that will allow you to negotiate with them a subject to transaction or a direct owner finance transaction with them from a wraparound perspective based upon who the seller is and the transaction overall. An expired listing is simply a listing that has run its time under contract in some format and the house did not sell for some reason. There could be a myriad of reasons why a house doesn't sell. It is possible that it was overpriced to start off with. Well, why would it be overpriced? Well, maybe the seller bought the home a year ago. Everybody thinks the market continues to go up and skyrocket when in fact right now we're in a downward turning market a bit. So those values could be going down. A lot of times, for instance, in a new subdivision where a seller buys a house a year ago but they're still building new homes nearby, if a homeowner wants to buy a house, are they going to buy a year-old house or a new house, where they get to pick out their colors, their appliances, things of that nature, and maybe they get some special financing offered by the builder? There's lots of scenarios like that pop up along the way. Sellers could be behind in payments. They could be in a situation where their job changed. I've had transactions where one seller had bought a home in the southeast part of Dallas, had only been there for about 9 months, lost her job and got a new job northwest Fort Worth. It was a 2-hour commute each way. She had to move. She had to sell. These things really do happen in real life. So maybe across town like that, move out of the state, medical issues, you could go on and on to the reasons why, but things happen. And so it's an opportunity to look at these scenarios, to buy them subject to the existing debt versus maybe a wraparound mortgage if there really is equity. But it's all about market conditions and what is going on in the marketplace at any one set in time. So let's just start off for a minute and talk about finding these. So of course, going through the multiple listing and mining them for particular neighborhoods, you can find listings fairly easily that have expired and or that are lagging in sale. In other words, maybe these have been on the market for 90 days, 120 days, and for whatever reason, the house hasn't sold. These are possible targets of the transaction. Now, when I'm looking at a deal like that, I'm going to research the transaction first off in the county clerk's website. I want to know about when they buy the house, what was that original loan balance, what was the average interest rate for that time when they bought the home and obtained that loan. I want to run my numbers through an amortization schedule. I want to look at the property taxes on the property, things of this nature, so I can get an estimate as to what their principal, interest, tax, and insurance payment is along the way. Also, so often these buyers may have only put a 3.5% to 5% down payment down. And so I can get close to what they may have bought the house for, to what they may owe today, 6 months, a year, 3 years down the road since they bought it, wherever that situation may lie. And I can then do an estimate of what they might be behind and why they're needing to sell. So if they're in these situations where the home is not selling or the listing has expired, oftentimes either the house needs repairs or it could be that they're simply behind in payments. Keep in mind, when a house is purchased, If you have to sell that house in a very short time frame, it takes a long time to build up equity so that you can just break even. Because when you go to sell that home, you're going to incur, in most cases, a 6% real estate commission, 1 to 2% in title fees, and maybe some other fees along the way that a buyer may ask to either be paid for or that the house might need in some minor repairs to get it ready for market in that instance. If you only put 3.5 to 5% down, automatically your seller is upside down with the market conditions unless the property value just went up very quickly. And as I said earlier, today we're in a downward trending marketplace, so those values may actually be dropping a little bit. That puts them literally upside down with their loan on the property's value. All of these things can be occurring. They can be behind in payments, as we said earlier as well. That makes it improbable for them to sell the house and be able to cash out of it. And so this becomes opportunistic for us to contact the realtor or the seller to see how we can help. Now, provided you're not a licensed agent, can you send direct mail to that seller? Yes. Can you talk to that seller direct? Yes. You're not required to go through the agent unless you want to. Now, oftentimes, though, sellers are going to rely upon their agent, so that's usually as best practices is to deal with the agent if they're still out there to see how you might be able to negotiate a deal with that seller based on what's going on. And of course, when I contact the agent, I'm going to let them know who I am, what we do. I'm going to let them understand that we know that this has been a lagging listing or it has expired. And I'm going to ask them basic questions. For instance, what's the situation as to why it hasn't sold? I mean, is it simply that the seller owes too much, maybe behind in payments, they need to move more quickly? What's going on? And look at how you can help. One of the trends today is to do just that. In newer subdivisions that were built in the last 1 to 5 years, and believe it or not, there are numerous sellers who, for whatever reason, have gotten in trouble. They've lost their job, they had to move, maybe they simply bit off more than they can chew. And guys, yeah, it's just like going to a buffet. Sellers do the same thing and they realize they just simply can't afford the house and they got to get out. So I ask basic questions with the realtor, and then I like to explain to them what are the mechanisms on how we can help them. Now, in Texas, there are certain ways to do that. In other states, there are certain ways of doing that. Knowing how to talk about how your seller is always protected, how you might be able to come in, take care of the agent in some format, 3% commission, 2%, something different. And keep in mind, guys, if it's an expired listing, that agent's contract is expired and they have received nothing. So are they going to expect 3%? Well, typically they expect it, but you have the ability to negotiate it. You do. And that's going to be problematic on every deal, and it's going to be different in whom you're dealing with and what role they're going to play. But a subject to transaction for a seller and realtor is much more simplistic than a traditional retail sale, which incurs obviously a contract, financing for the buyer that you've got to consider and be looking at, home inspections you go through, title companies, the closing processes. All of this is so much different than the creative finance side of our business. But you're able to negotiate with your realtor, maybe some reduced fees, maybe not, but open that door so that they can present this to the seller. How are they going to be protected? How can you help them out of this situation? And why is it going to be a benefit for them? Think about this for a minute. If you have a seller who has, let's say, a $2,500 a month payment, for instance, and something happened maybe in the last few months and they've gotten behind in payments, just 6 months of payments is $15,000. So if they wanted to go sell a home that might be worth, let's say, $350,000, their PITA payment is $2,500. They only put down 3.5% down payment when they bought this house. Now they're going to incur about 8% in resale costs. They're another $15,000 behind in mortgage payments, which may equate to another 3% or so. Or let me do my math in my head real fast. 4.5% to 5%. So now they are probably anywhere from 8 to 10% upside down in value and they simply don't have the cash to bring to the table. And understand this as well. Sellers do not understand the creative finance business. Realtors really don't understand creative finance. So we have to kind of hold their hand and walk them through the process. But the whole key is how are we going to be able to help that seller out of a situation? The realtor already recognizes there's a problem. The house isn't selling. It's been 6 months. The listing has expired. Obviously, you have to look at it through a different approach and a different lens. And this just may be the solution that they need to solve whatever the problem is. Remember, in the creative finance world, so often as we're buying homes, it's all about solving problems and the problem for the seller in these situations. They don't need to know how the investor is going to handle the back end, whether it's going to be a rental property or whether it's going to be a wraparound mortgage or just what. They are simply looking on a way to get out of the deal in a way that works for them. I also like to tell sellers how they're protected vis-a-vis a security instrument, a deed of trust, or what that document might be in other states out there. I like to tell them how they can move very quickly to regain the property back in the event the investor is not making payments as agreed. And I like to find ways to give them a comfort zone so that they're more likely to go ahead and move forward with the transaction. And the better you can explain this to the seller and the realtor, the more positives you can put forth on how you're solving the seller's situation, how the seller is going to be protected along the way, and items of that nature, I think it becomes more beneficial that you're going to be able to obtain more contracts to buy these properties. Now, if you go to contract to buy these properties, of course, you need to go through the standardized processes to ensure full and complete disclosure of what's going on, who's paying the realtor, who's paying the closing cost, who's paying any arrears, disclosures of any underlying lien issues such as the due on sale clause and items of that nature. So there's a full and complete understanding. But it's a great opportunity to do that. And again, it seems like a lot of neighborhoods, as I said earlier, built within the last 1 to 5 years is a great target marketplace because that's where this great low interest rate came from. Anywhere from 2.5% to 4.5% interest rates are out there for the taking, which is a great commodity to control. So as you look at that deal, guys, you've got to run your numbers. What is my PITI payment? Am I using cash to pay the seller for my carry cost, to pay the realtor, etc., things of that nature? And do I need to get that back in some format? Well, if you rent the property, as we know, you're just getting a cash flow. You're not going to get that down payment. If you sell that home with a wraparound mortgage, you'll get a down payment back that may help replenish the cash you're out of pocket. And in both instances, you have a cash flow model. And the question really becomes is, can you rent this home and cash flow, or is it better to sell or finance it with a wraparound mortgage to cash flow? Every deal you look at is a little bit different along the way. So after you've had the opportunity to target your area that you're shooting to try to find these expired listings, these listings that have run their course 90, 120 days and they're still out there and not moving for some reason, and you're looking at this transaction, one of the things that I look at is I love the opportunity to take advantage of those low interest rates because I cannot get that same rate in a mortgage today or a bank loan or anything. So truly it becomes a commodity. But at the same token, I don't want to be upside down on my deal. I've seen lots of transactions where because of the seller's situation, maybe because of renovations needed to the property, other fees that get mixed in, and the loan balance and the current value, when you buy that property, the loan balance plus the funds you're out of pocket and carry costs puts you upside down to the actual value. You've got to look at the fact that if you're going to do a back-end seller finance where maybe you're able to sell this home for anywhere from 7.5%, 8%, 8.5%, 9% interest rates to a back-end buyer, maybe higher based on the marketplace that you're in. If you can do that though, you get your down payment, you've got to ensure that the borrower's loan and the loan that you have with the mortgage company never get upside down. Now, where the cash came from to put down to buy the home, reinstate the loan, etc., it becomes a little bit irrelevant there. Because if you are doing a wraparound mortgage on the back end, you have that down payment to help offset that. And hopefully, because you picked up that low interest rate, let's say 3.5%, and you can sell that house, let's just throw a number out, 8.5%, you're making a 5% differential annually. And so on a house that might have $325,000 loan balance, you're talking a $16,000 a year positive cash flow. Well, that positive cash flow also helps you to repay your private loan very quickly. Now, every investor is a little bit different. Some want to not pay off their private loan quickly if that's what they're doing. Maybe they're putting cash in the deal and they're just looking for a return on investment. Great. Everybody approaches these deals different, but it's when you analyze that deal, you've got to make sure it adds up. I've seen deals that work great with zero equity. It's all a cash flow play. I've seen other deals that you have some equity and less cash flow. More equity, but also great cash flow, and all the various places in between. But I've also seen houses that when you evaluate the repairs, the hold time, the dollars out of pocket, there is no way to sell that house and not be upside down. So if you can't do a wrap mortgage because you will wind up being upside down, okay, look at it through the lens of a rental property, a short-term rental, Airbnb, whatever, maybe Section 8, whatever. Can you get the cash flow that is needed in order to make the deal work for you? And maybe you're just going to warehouse that home for a while. You can get sufficient cash flow coming in to carry the load to make your deal satisfactory for you. Awesome. Because maybe in a year or two or three, marketplace dynamics change that allow you to then go with a different strategy also. Every deal is a little bit different, but targeting transactions of this nature, looking at the interest rates for a commodity purpose is a great strategy for the day. Learning how to take time to talk with the realtor professionally from an explanation process so they're not scared. How to present to them a scenario like this in a way on how the seller is always protected. How to put it in proper contract form, using a law firm to close the transaction. And I didn't say title company because title companies can't help explain the transaction. It doesn't mean not getting title insurance. It's making certain that there are possibly independent third parties there who can help explain the deal to a seller, to the agent, to help you, the investor, out in that explanation process. But keep in mind, guys, this is an awesome strategy for developing cash flow. So often investors think that you have to have both equity and cash flow, and every deal is different. To develop equity, different situations occur in that scenario. Oftentimes to do that, you're looking at a major rehab where you can buy homes at low loan to values. These homes that were recently bought, there is oftentimes going to be almost no equity. It's going to be a pure cash flow play. And that's okay too, so long as that cash flow helps you accomplish that goal. And one of the things that I see simply is that I like to use my cash flow to hyper accelerate and pay off any private debt that I have very quickly. I don't want to let it linger. I don't want to put my private lender at risk. So if it's my cash, different ball game. But if I'm using someone else's money, I want to pay it off quickly. But once it's paid off, what happens is now I've got awesome cash flow. And I am okay with just really good cash flow versus cash flow and equity. Different ways to approach the transactions. And of course, there are different strokes for different folks based upon everyone's philosophy and their investment strategies out there. So I hope you found this video helpful. This is a great opportunity to go out and analyze deals of this nature, to target neighborhoods that will fit these criteria. And these neighborhoods, guys, are everywhere. It's not just in major metropolitan areas. They're in secondary and tertiary cities and towns as well. So guys, if y'all found this video helpful at all, take a minute and like it. Don't forget to comment below and we'll do our best to get back to you on those. And don't forget to take a moment and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll see you guys next time.